Welcome back to Plug and Play EV. I'm Steve, and in this one we will be looking at the Hyundai IONIQ 5 in wintertime. Cold weather specifically, and battery conditioning, something that is important for DC fast charging and to get your optimal rates, but which may not be quite as clear as some of the systems in the car make out. So let's take a look at how long it takes to precondition and what you should expect from fast charging this car in cold weather. So I have done videos on the IONIQ 5's battery preconditioning before, specifically when we got the feature back in the winter of 2022-23. But there are some developments as we get into the 2025 model year of being able to just push a button and be able to precondition the pack. So that seems like a win, and in many ways it is, but there are some things to bear in mind, specifically with how long it takes the car to warm up that battery pack from different starting temperatures and what you might expect as different battery temperatures are reached. So I wanted to go into what's on the 2025 IONIQ 5 that at least we know about, and what you still might want to think about even if you're in the latest version and can just hit that button to precondition. Corbin, the IONIQ guy, who does an excellent job over there covering all things Hyundai, Kia and Genesis, be road tripping that, so we should have some videos from him kind of looking at the real details of that system and its pros and cons right now. So for the briefest of histories, first model year of the car, 2022, did not actually come with battery preconditioning right out of the gate. It had about 9 months where it had something called winter mode, which was next to useless. All-wheel drive versions of the car then subsequently got the battery conditioning feature, circulates the warm liquid through the coolant loops and warms up the pack for fast charging. It's important to know if you're in the market for a 2022 model year that the rear-wheel drive models in that car did not get this battery preconditioning feature. So they did the firmware update, changed from winter mode to battery conditioning mode. You can only use the native navigation system to activate it, which is similar to a Tesla, but the Tesla is the be-all and end-all in terms of using its navigation system and every part of the software to calculate the route and pretty much do everything that you want to do. In the IONIQ, you have the different layers of the native navigation and then being able to layer Android Auto or Apple CarPlay on top. Unfortunately, the native system has to be used to activate the battery preconditioning, so you need to navigate to a charger that is a fast charger and put it in the native system so that all your navigation is happening through there. If you then try to activate Google Maps through Android Auto on top of it or Apple CarPlay, it'll turn off the native navigation and battery preconditioning will stop. So a bit of a faff. The main downside there, other than having to use the native system if you don't like it, the charging stations aren't necessarily updated as quickly in this system as they would be in Google Maps, or even if you just wanted to be able to press a button as you can now in the 2025 model year to get that started. That would cut out all the problems of not having a dedicated destination for fast charging in the system. There are ways around it. You can set to a charger that is near it and then use Google Maps on your phone. You can have a car warm up before you go to a destination so that it completes battery conditioning in your driveway or at the hotel, wherever you are, and have the battery warm and then just drive a short distance. But obviously less convenient than having the option of Google Maps and just being able to start the battery preconditioning. But I thought I'd cover this in the context of what's come before and what we can expect from our 2022, 23 and 24 model year IONIQs. So one of the biggest things to point out really is that the battery conditioning is not immediate. It may seem obvious as you think about a large pack that basically spans the base of the vehicle and how quickly you need to warm that up. But if you're going from something like we have here in Massachusetts, which is regularly around or just below freezing, then you can understand how far it takes to get that up to the optimal temperature of 69 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll overlay all the Celsius temperatures here. For Fahrenheit, you're looking at 69 degrees, and that's the battery minimum. It's important to know as you look at some of the readings in the car, as you get into OBD2 data, that kind of thing. You've got the battery minimum, the average, and then the maximum temperature, and it's the minimum that it's looking for. So even if you're getting that average or the max hitting up to that 69 degrees, if the battery minimum is still at 50, 55, then you're still going to be waiting for additional power to kick in. So the question then becomes, how long does it take to get the battery temperature from ambient, whatever it's going to be there, all the way up to the temperature it wants to be at, getting into the 70, 80 degree Fahrenheit kind of range to really kick in the charging capabilities of this car, which is why a lot of people opted for it in the first place. So although we've done some tests of this in the past, I wanted to do another one here in the winter of 2025 to really get a feel for how long it takes to warm this up and what you might expect from different levels of temperature.
Here's just a quick example where temperatures are about as low as we'll get here. No wind chill though, so there is that. But this is with more than half an hour, probably 35 minutes. Battery conditioning, 25% state of charge starting. The 30 minutes of conditioning in the driveway led to about 2-3% being used, and then you have to obviously drive to the charger in most cases. This actually is doing pretty good. That 23 minutes to 80% at this temperature is kind of proof that the conditioning does work, even over a half-hour conditioning session. But it's got the battery minimum up to 55 here, so you can see that number. But battery minimum there is at 55.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Battery max is 66.2. The heater has been up to about 87-88 degrees Fahrenheit at its peak, and it is still 18.5 ambient there. So it's going up, and once we get to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, that should crank up to the next level, which is around 110-120 kilowatts. And there you go. Battery minimum hitting 59 degrees Fahrenheit. We crank up to 120, 130 kilowatts. It's that amperage. 100 something to 168 requested, 167 amps requested. And there's another ramp point just below 68 degrees Fahrenheit. On the battery minimum, it moved up to 180, seems to be the next zone. Now it's requesting 265 amps, so got a good amount there. And I don't know if it'll go much higher than that. Oh, it's dropping again. So now dropping down to 200 amps. Not totally sure, but this is all on the car. It's the car's BMS deciding what it wants to do here. Not totally sure why it decided to pull back there, but at this point you are starting to get pretty close to what the car can do. Just don't mind that as a peak, not bad at all. Not sure why it went cratering thereafter, but again, time to 80% will still be pretty respectable. We've been on 15 minutes so far and cranked 20 to 60. 20 to 80 in 24 minutes is pretty solid. So just a gradual taper now, and that's what I expect we'll see, although the battery is pretty toasty there at 106 almost Fahrenheit, but the minimum's down at 88. So what you'll see is most likely, even though it's at 80% here, just a steady drawdown, 1 digit by 1 digit.
Even with the relatively mild starting temperature, it takes that 20 to 30 minute period of reconditioning the battery pack to be able to get it up from that ambient temperature in the 40s all the way up to the roughly 70 degrees kind of range where it wants to be. So it's not a complete disaster if you don't get it up to the 70 degrees right away. You can get it into the 60 degree range, and it will still give you a step up in power compared to what you'd get on a completely cold soaked pack. But you can see that you're starting to get lower power. It's more 110, 120 kilowatts than the maximum kind of 200 plus that you may expect even in a cold weather session. But this is important for people who are getting the 2025 and may not know the ins and outs of the system. I think the tendency will be to think that you push that button and maybe 5-10 minutes of heating, you're going to get a nice toasty pack, unless something has changed significantly, and it's really not going to be that kind of instantaneous hit that some people may be expecting. So you may think, I get off the interstate, maybe the charging station is a mile or two away, hit the button either just before you get off or when you get off the interstate, and then you'll be nice and set for fast charging. I think think that's going to be a unpleasant surprise for some people who take delivery of the car early here, because it's simply not going to be that case unless you're very close to that temperature anyway, starting in the 50s or mid 50s Fahrenheit. Then you're not going to get enough warming from that to really get up to optimal temperatures. And this is kind of evident in what the car does with the navigation system. It will start to kick on that battery conditioning about 20 to 25 miles out from the fast charger, and that gives it a solid almost 30 minutes to really go to work. In terms of power draw, that's something you're going to want to think about a little bit. It's definitely worth it. The trade-off of actually using that energy to go to the battery conditioning is certainly worth it to get more energy into the car once you stop to fast charge. It's maxing out at about 5 kilowatts. Usually see it hover between 4.5 to 5 kilowatts. If you look in the energy information screen, which is just in the main hamburger menu, then energy information, then electricity use, at least in my version of this, then you have a section called battery care right to the far right, which I'll overlay here, and that's telling you down to the decimals how many kilowatts it's using and what percentage it has used in this drive session. So bottom line, essentially, if you think about roughly 5 kilowatts going out over the course of an hour, 30 minutes condition, that's going to be approximately 2 to 2.5 kilowatt hours. So not a whole lot of energy, and if you're getting the difference between well into the hundreds versus the kind of 60 or 70 kilowatts that you'll expect on a cold battery pack, then you can see it's immediately beneficial and you put that energy right back in pretty quickly. But if you're going really low, maybe down to 10%, 5%, that's probably enough time almost for it to cool right back down. I mean, you'll still get some heat from the driving, but if it's really cold outside, it's not going to take it long between shutting off at 20%, getting to the charger at 10 or 5% for it to cool down again and you to have wasted that energy on the battery conditioning and also not get the benefit of it, or not get all of the benefit of it, because the battery has cooled down in the intervening period between when it shut off at 20% and when you arrived at 5 to 10%. Probably makes more sense in these cold weather trips, at least in these model years from early on. Factor in a little extra capacity and buffer, stop a little bit earlier and just get the benefit of those faster charge sessions through to 80, 85% and then get going again. So I hope this was useful. We are a little of the way into winter here, but there's still several cold months ahead of us as we head into spring, and even then it can be cold enough to have this battery pack warming needing to happen to get full fast charging. So interesting to hear your experiences. Have you used this system? Is it something that you're confident in the native system already to do the conditioning for you and you just kind of follow its guidance? Or are you trying some of these little tips and tricks to kind of work around the edges but still having to plan to that 15-20%? Or if you have a new 2025 model, I know there's not too many of you out there, but there will be as the year progresses. How are you seeing this battery conditioning work? Is it something that has been incredibly useful and kind of fixed now for you, now that you've got the button to activate it whenever you want? Or is it just kind of an iteration on something that was already a little bit flawed in the previous model years? Let us know down in the comments. Always eager to learn from folks who've got different model years and different makes even. So look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay warm. Cheers.